allowing people to come out of just this I'm a lone being in this lone world and I'm alone with my thoughts and I'm alone with my troubles, to all of a sudden, whoa, I'm a part of something bigger. There's a network of support, and maybe not everything is just mine to hold and to digest.
Hello, and welcome to Sacred Herbalism, the full moon segment of the Elder Tree podcast, where we explore how plants can support us to enter into a sacred relationship with life and the living world. I'm Stephanie Hazel, and I've recorded this episode beneath the gaze of epic Wollumbin, where I live in Bundjalung country, and I pay my respects to the First Nations people of this land, as well as to the spirits and plants of this ancient earth. If you love what we do, you can support the Elder Tree mission of putting medicine in the hands of the people by joining our Patreon, where you can access special teachings from our presenters and our interviewees. So, let's walk into the moonlit forest together. Are you ready? Plants and our relationships to them can be powerful allies in our healing journeys. Not just the physical, but the spiritual or psycho-emotional healing that we're often seeking too. Do you agree? I know that this is something I've been pondering deeply for 5 years or so, and I work a lot with mental health in clinic. So for me, this shows up as another dimension of clinical herbalism. So when I choose herbs to support mental health, anxiety, depression, other aspects of this issue, then I also try to choose a plant whose sole property works with the deeper healing that someone might need or be speaking about. This month's guest, Rachel, also works with this same question, but her work as a therapist collaborates with herbs like hawthorn, yarrow, rose, and others from a deeply animist and personalized space of spirit connection. Curious? I definitely was. Rachel Weitz is a folk herbalist, therapist, and healer living in Colorado, USA. After quite an amazing journey of apprenticeships and study that we'll explore later in this episode, from a counselling degree to a solid stint in the Peruvian Amazon with the Shipibo peoples and more, she's created a healing modality she calls animistic healing arts. So in this modality, she works with her clients to restore the lost sense of kinship with the greater intelligence that is within and around us. The plants, the ancestors, nature herself, and individual people's guides. Her aim is to support folks in facilitating their own direct healing process in connection with these guides and more than human relationships. So last month I interviewed Sky Cielita Flor, and you might have heard that episode. Well, these two are actually really good friends. In fact, they shared the deeply transformative journey of 4 years of apprenticeship with the Shipibo curanderos in the Amazon. And I really love hearing the different ways that they've incorporated this lived experience of continuous cultural animism into their work and their lives. Alright, so let's jump into this episode and discover how therapy, animism, and herbalism weave into each other in Rachel Weitz's healing work. Good morning, Rachel, and good evening for you. You are dialing in from the United States of America, and it's so lovely to have you here. Welcome to the Elder Tree.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Yeah, and as we were just saying before, we've just been getting to know each other in the last half hour, and we've already laughed and cried and had lots of moments that we'd wish we'd hit record. But here we are, lots more juiciness to come. Where exactly are you located? Where are you dialing in from?
I am in a town called Lafayette, Colorado. It's kind of in between Denver and Boulder, are sort of bigger names in Colorado that people might know. And it's the traditional lands of the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne people.
Amazing. Beautiful. I don't know the States very well, so what's the landscape there like for you?
Mountain. So I live kind of in a plains area, but very close to the mountains. So in the foothills, like right close to the foothills of the mountains. So in just 30 minutes, I can reach the mountains. and spend a lot of time there. But here we've got, big pine trees, cottonwood trees. I have a maple tree in my yard, willow. There's creeks that run through. Yeah, we have animals like coyotes and deer and different kinds of wild cats, bears.
Mm. Wow, gorgeous, wild, mountainous land, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you are a friend of Sky Sealy DeFleur, who has been on this podcast before, and she insisted I absolutely must interview you, which is beautiful. I love those recommendations. And I've been learning a bit about your work, and you practice something that you called the animist healing arts. And I would love you to explain what that means.
Yeah. Thank you. And hello, Sky, if you're listening. Love you. um, we Sky talked a lot in her interview about living in Peru, and we lived in Peru together. So if you listen to that episode, we shared a lot of that journey together. So bonded us for life. So animistic healing arts is, I just looking for a term to describe what I do, and that's the best working term I have right now. But it might continue to shift and change. But I was looking for something that really described being in relationship with the spirit that moves through all things. Because I really feel like that's
Mm.
at the heart of the work I do. Originally I did training, like I have a master's in counseling, so I have that, therapy training, but it never felt quite right for me to just do therapy on its own. It just wasn't like exactly a fit for me, even though I use those skills all the time and I'm grateful for them. And then I spent many years studying with different kinds of earth-centered healers, and then kind of brought that together with the therapeutic training I had to allow in the healing space the broader network of unseen beings and seen beings like the plants that we're in relationship with, to really support our quality of life. I was going to say the healing process, but sometimes it's a healing process, and sometimes it's a just improving the quality of life to remember who we are by what we are in relationship with. So that just bigger relational field.
Kind of like
um,
expanding our sense of self. Like expanding our sense of self to be beyond just the little human in us. Mm.
exactly. And maybe even a remembering, and then so much more can happen than just being an individual with our neurotic thoughts by ourselves, because there's so much more than just that. Sometimes there's so much more that's involved in the kinds of thoughts we're having. Maybe it's something that's happening on the earth or the planet or in our community. And just broadening that beyond just the self is, I think, a really healthy thing to do.
And so then, as far as the healing arts go, like what does your one-on-one work look like?
Yeah. So when I meet with people, I support them to have their own direct connection with their guides of spirit. So it could be so many different things. It could be their well and wise ancestors, it could be plants or trees or nature spirits that they're connected to, or other kinds of, goddesses, deities, angels. It's like whatever somebody feels like is their, what they have that affinity or kinship to. And so we just find ways to discover that together, so that they can have their own direct connection. And then I support that direct connection. And then they can ask questions. Sometimes people are just building the relational field. And then eventually they can ask questions, receive healings, receive insight for their lives or insight for their communities. And so I'm kind of just holding the space and kind of normalizing those relationships, because sometimes that's just what people need when they're coming to this kind of space. Somebody be like, yes, of course that tiger is talking to you, or of course that yarrow plant is giving you that information, and just supporting people to deepen into that trust.
Amazing. And what's the impact of that work on people? Like, what do you notice changes for them as they start to trust that they are in relationship with more than just the human world?
I just felt a little just teary-eyed thinking about that question. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, of course, there's a whole spectrum of how it impacts people, but the people who the work really resonates for, or they're like really hungry for it, or really want to lean in, I find that is quite transformative, in kind of what I was saying before, allowing people to come out of just this like I'm a lone being in this lone world, and I'm alone with my thoughts, and I'm alone with my troubles, to all of a sudden, whoa, I'm a part of something bigger. There's a network of support, and maybe not everything is just mine to hold and to digest. Maybe some of these things aren't, one of
Mm.
the more profound things is people realizing, well, it's great. We have to take responsibility for what's ours. So that's always important. But sometimes there's things that are not our responsibility to digest or take in, and actually it can be quite harmful. So one example, of how it's helpful is like, oh, maybe this is something that's ancestral. And if I'm in connection with a well and wise ancestor, then they're able to actually do that, support that ancestral healing work, because it's actually too much for me to try to keep holding in my own individual body. And so it can be so helpful in ways like that. Does that make sense?
Mm. Totally. Yeah, I love that. And I've been thinking about that a little bit as well. That so I live on a property and there's 7 acres and it's, quite a disturbed landscape. It's all forest now, but not that long ago it was cows walking all over it and all the trees cut down. And of course, there's all of these different invasive species that are in the forest, and it's not like an established healthy forest. And when I sit with the land here, sometimes I have that feeling of being like, oh, the burden that I hold, like, oh, I'm the caretaker of this land. And, in the Western system, I own the land. And so it's my job to make sure that these big camphor laurel trees are being cut down, the lantana is being dealt with. And, I have to kind of manage the land in a way that is taking it back into balance, because not my blood ancestors, but my kind of cultural ancestors came and destroyed the environment here. Is I'm saying quote
Yeah.
unquote destroyed. And there's this feeling of burden in that way, that sometimes I feel the land and I look at all of the so-called weeds and how they're doing something. Most of them are doing something to rehabilitate the land, and all the creatures and the insects and the ants, and seeing that I'm like, oh, it's not mine alone. Like, actually, the ecosystem, the incredible intelligence inside that system is also actively remediating the landscape.
What a relief. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm so not capable as like, currently a heavily pregnant woman, like, to go and like do all that labor. Like, it's actually just, even if I wasn't pregnant, I would need to have a full-time team of gardeners to even push it noticeably in the direction that my mind tells me I should be
Yeah.
doing it, right?
Yeah.
So you do one-on-one work and you also do group work. Is there much difference in what that looks like? Like, do you take groups of people into the forest? Like, what? Tell me a bit about that.
Yes, I love the group work so much. And I actually just on Sunday completed my groups for the year, so I'm really feeling it a lot in my heart. So I run different kinds of programs, but generally we're having that remembering together. And there's something that happens when we are connecting with the earth, with the land, with the plants as a group. There's almost something else that can happen that can't happen when we're just alone, a particular kind of magic. And so sometimes we'll do things like connect, we'll have like a particular plant that we're going to meet, that we're sitting with. And we're like opening to the relationship together of that plant as an elder, as, a wisdom keeper, as one who we're just coming with so much respect and love and care to as a group. And then we're having our own personal time to tune in and just start building the relationship throughout our time together. And then we have these sort of individual revelations, but then when we bring them to the group, it's almost like we're all of a sudden sitting in council and putting these pieces of the puzzle together. It's like the plant is expressing itself through each of us in these unique ways, and we bring them to each other, and it brings this like multi-dimensional wisdom forward. And it's kind of like when we all take in a plant together, it's like we all of a sudden just become kin, or we just become family. It's like we all just become part of this consciousness of the plant together, and it's a really beautiful experience. So we'll have the wisdom, and then sometimes there's different, the plants will sort of guide it. Sometimes there's different kinds of healing rituals that the plants will want to do, as well as like plant brushings, plants on the body, plant bathing, um, in different ways that we just want to honor the plants deeply and kind of listen to how they want to guide what we're going to do.
What's a plant that you worked with in one of your recent groups that's really fresh for you?
I'm thinking about, I call her Crohn's wort, but most people call her mugwort.
Yeah, and tell me about like what emerged in that this
Yeah.
particular journey that you've just had with mugwort.
I love this question because one of the things that is so beautiful, and I bet you talk about this with other people on your podcast. Tell me if you do, but because I'm so much more heavy on the kind of plant spirit relationship, as opposed to like the plant science. What I found from the plant relationship field is that there can be so much more than what has ever been written in a book about a plant. And that each plant, there might be themes that people pick up that are similar, but then there's always like the plant is going to uniquely meet each person where they're at, and almost like a lock and a key, it's going to like open up what that person needs. And it's a really beautiful, it just speaks to like each of the individual relationships. So I could say, oh, I just read all these people say this is what the flower essence of this plant does. But I always tell people in my class, like, forget anything you know about this plant. Let's just see what wants to come forward. And it's like things that you could never Google or research that we begin to learn. And you start to learn that the plants are really have this like boundless wisdom. And what I found is that really the plants are just doing, they're each doing their own unique way of bringing people back to their true selves.
Yeah, beautiful. I do group work with
Um,
plants. I use tinctures and I do it blind, especially or if in my longer courses I do the first week blind. So really getting people to tune in without being they don't have to forget what they know about the plant because they don't know what the plant is. So taking that out. And it's amazing. I love there's both a huge variation
yes.
on what people experience. So there's that individual aspect, um, which you were saying, that you think of as the plant being the person where it's at, and I think of it as kind of the medicine being that emergent property that comes from the relationship between the person, the plant, even the environment that we're in, that there's like a collaborative, the medicine of the plant is a collaborative thing. And it says that individual property, and there's also the themes that come out. And
Yeah.
sometimes, I just a few days ago taught a group through a nettle process. I've been taking nettle for 2 weeks, and it's interesting that um, in this particular group, nearly there were I think 5 women in the group, and nearly all of them got really dehydrated and had headaches. And the drying property of nettle, which is, I would say, moderate, was really strong. Even, that it was like this headache theme that I've never seen in another group before. And there were still some of the themes I expect coming out, but it's like both,
Mm.
yeah. How we can learn things about plants directly from them is something that continues to blow me away and continues to deepen my trust in the aliveness of plants, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about your question because I know you asked me about a specific plant. And then all of a sudden I was remembering, well, I did have a hawthorn class. I know I said I was going to talk about mugwort, but um, then I just had this, oh, hawthorn. I just say the name hawthorn and my heart, starts to grow a couple sizes. But we we tuned in with the hawthorn, and it was like how I talked earlier about, like, all of a sudden everybody just becomes kin? It happened in, like, such a fast time with the hawthorn, like, so fast, like, all of a sudden everybody in the group was, like, best friends, And it just brought everybody into their heart space so much that then people were connecting and communicating from their heart instead of their head, and it was just a very different way to communicate, and it was almost like weaving these networks of connection, of relationship, like almost how mycelial networks would be, weaving that through the group. And everybody was just feeling each other so much, and it was so beautiful.
So the hawthorn really changed the dynamic of the group into a very heart connected dynamic. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah.
more about hawthorn. Like, what do you love about hawthorn? What's your relationship with that plant like?
Hmm. Well, this might sound sort of fantastical, but this is what's coming to mind when you ask that question. So I'll share it. I was connecting with ancestors, and I have one of my lineages that's from Ireland, and hawthorn is a big Irish tree. And I was connecting with this lineage, and they were showing me, like, that they were born out of the hawthorn tree. That's what in my meditation. They were like, "We just came right out of the hawthorn tree, our people did." And, I don't know how that actually works. But
Mm.
that just feels like connection where there really is a
Mm.
kinship that's ancestral in me, that makes me feel like, "Oh, I know you, and you know me, and you know my
Mm.
people through time." And so it's almost like this familiarity, and, there's something just really, really beautiful about that. And I also love that there's the big thorns. I had a teacher when I first met hawthorn for the first time. She had us touch the thorns of the hawthorn first. She said, "First, you have to say, 'I see your boundaries. I respect your boundary,' before you harvest or do anything else, any more connecting." And that's something that's always stuck with me, is that way that those plants, like rose too, that have that deep protection, but then the big opening, heart opening, they create the safety in order to open.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting how there's a few that rose and hawthorn both share that, don't they? Being a really potent, heart-opening, softening plant, but with these
Yeah.
strong boundaries and protections as well.
I also really love that hawthorn
Mm.
has those qualities, and that, like, if you have high blood pressure, she knows how to lower it, or if it's low, she knows how to higher it. Like, she's intelligent, and that always really blows me away.
The amazing I think a lot of plants are like that. They have that intelligence of finding balance in the body, in a specific areas, and that's something I is really different with pharmaceutical medicine. That pharmaceutical medicine has a very clear and strong and kind of
Mm,
forceful action that's always pushing in the same direction. And if I'm someone with low blood pressure, if I was to take medication for high blood
yeah.
pressure, it would be really dangerous for me, right? But that somehow plants have this ability to listen. Actually, I feel like they listen to what's happening in the body, and then they respond in an appropriate way. Like there are lives and intelligence that just isn't there in the pharmaceuticals, even though that strong forceful action sometimes can be really helpful. There isn't that
Mhm.
subtlety, and that's why I feel like I trust plant medicine so much
Yeah.
more than pharmaceutical medicine. And I trust that it's like, no, it's working with me and collaborating and listening.
There's that word like relational again, right? That's so relational. And as I'm just listening to you talk, I'm like, oh, it's just miraculous. Like just miraculous. I always think about like,
Well, it's only miraculous. It's only miraculous inside a worldview that says that only humans are intelligent and that
hmm,
all the natural world is a machine and is mechanically operating. And if we, really swallow that mechanical model, I feel like I've done a lot of work to try to unpick that from my psyche, but it's so deep in our childhood and our, um, schooling system and how we are indoctrinated in our culture that it's very hard to unpick. And inside that worldview, that a plant can listen and respond to the inner state of the body or the heart or the mind or the spirit
hmm,
is so miraculous.
wow. I just it's like,
And for someone like the Shipibo peoples that you've been working with, it would seem to almost mundane and expected, right?
yeah.
Like, of course the plants listen to us and give us the medicine we need. Why would they do anything else?
Well, and I just think it's as miraculous as like we wouldn't be here without the plants. Like they were here first and then we came
Mm,
and they sustained us. Like right there, they really are our ancestors in such a big sense.
mm.
And then they like take care of us in that way when you're talking about it. That care. Oh,
Yeah, I remember. The feeling that's coming to me now is that the astoundment, of or the astonishment of that feeling of like, oh, to listen and respond like that, they must care about us, right? It feels almost like proof. And I remember my dad telling me a story. Just that feeling really just reminded me of this time as a child, of dad telling me a story of a time he was sailing. So he sailed a lot. We sailed a lot, and when I was 4, he sailed single-handedly across the Atlantic. So on his own, GPSs didn't exist then. That was 1988. um, it's a big journey. Not many
wow.
people are that adventurous, and it took me about 3 months, I think, maybe 2 months across. So from Senegal, West Africa, to Brazil. That's a big ocean to cross. And he had lots of amazing stories, but one that struck me is he said, obviously, if you're sailing with two people, someone's always awake. But when there's one person, you can't be awake for 2 months. Like, you have to sleep. And so you put the autopilot on and it, just keeps the boat going straight ahead.
Oh,
Go to sleep. And then sometimes in the ocean, there are unexpected, like little rocky islands or outcrops or things that exist in the deep ocean. And that's, if you hit one of them, then you're dead because you're in the middle of the ocean and your boat has a hole in it. So he telling me a story about being asleep and a pod of dolphins waking him up. And what they were doing is they were like throwing their bodies against the side of the boat, kind of where his cabin was. And he's like, "What's all that noise?" And got up and had a look. And these dolphins are like jumping up and down, and, chattering at him. And he had a look at what was happening. And he was about half an hour, not, 20 minutes away from completely um, running into one of these little rocky outcroppings and essentially dying, right? And there's so many layers of that story that my whole life have blown me away, continue to blow me
wow.
away. That the dolphins understood that he's not a water creature, that inside this metal box, there's a being in there who can't survive in the ocean if their boat is damaged. That they understood that he was asleep, that even that they knew where in the boat he was asleep. That they, I don't know if they're using like sonar or how they worked out where he was and where the right spot to like
Wow.
bang against the side of the boat is, that if they did that, he'd wake up and be able to save himself. The level of intelligence of that is one thing that already blows me away. And then the deeper thing is that they cared, that they could be bothered, that they understood that and they were like, oh, that being is going to die if we don't do something. Let's do something. And as a group, they
Yeah.
did that. I think that story laid a foundation in my heart as a child for that relational aspect of like, oh, all the beings are yes, there's prey and there's
Mm.
predators and all these things, but there's also a state of care, that those things coexist inside the like inherent fabric of life and nature.
I'm just feeling that in my body as you're like I'm just breathing with that in my body and letting that like wash over me.
It's wild, isn't it?
Mm. It's beyond beautiful. It's that feeling again. It's like when you share that story, I have this feeling of just like waking up in my body, like a waking up feeling to just the preciousness of this life and the beauty of this life and the interconnection. Just, yeah, it's a real medicine story.
Yeah, it's amazing how it stayed with me, and
Thank you for
just
sharing.
oh, my pleasure. And I think it's not till actually this moment that I've just connected, because there's something that we were talking about that awakened a feeling, and I was like, oh, I know this feeling. That story, that as well, of like, yeah, that's one of those founding myths. Not that it's a myth, but founding stories in my inner mythos that has allowed me to move towards an understanding of the world of feeling like I belong, like feeling that I'm wanted by life, feeling that earth and Gaia and spirit
Mm,
care about me, and how
mm.
blessed we are when we feel that.
Can you feel it right now as you're talking about it?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel close to tears, and I just had this moment of like, oh, I bet that's what Rachel's doing for her people in this animist healing arts. It's like an awakening that feeling of like, oh yeah, it's okay for me to be here. Life loves me. I belong. I'm
Yeah.
nestled into all of these relationships.
Yeah. And there's so much talk about these days about like attachment work and trauma work because we need it. But to me, this is the antidote to all of that
Mm.
belonging, feeling securely attached to your place woven through life.
Mm. Securely attached to the primordial mother of earth and spirit, the primordial
Mm,
parents.
yeah. Like there's enough cosmic milk for us all.
Just look at the Milky Way. We're lucky here, like in the southern hemisphere, we get an amazing view of the Milky Way at nighttime. The stars, it's like you really can see that cosmic milk flowing through the sky. That popped into my head when you said that, and now I
Oh,
think next time I see the Milky Way, I'm be
yeah.
like, yeah, there's enough cosmic milk for all of us. Huzzah! I'm going to loop back to Hawthorn a bit later, but I know that you've done some amazingly divergent and in depth trainings and apprenticeships in your life. And we've spoken about doing a Masters of Counselling, as well as spending, I think you said 2 years living in the Amazon with the Shipibo people, you're working with ayahuasca and plant dietas and plant spirits. Are there any other um, okay, well, first I want to know what is like the golden thread that each of those two separate paths have offered you.
I feel like the jewel of the counseling training was just helping me practice a lot of getting comfortable working with people, just being with people, and I did that when I was pretty young and I didn't really know myself very well yet. So it kind of allowed me to do a lot of self-study of getting to know myself and also just how to be with people and how to listen and for that one.
Awesome. And the Shipibo ayahuasca training.
I think one of the golden threads there was to be within an animistic culture that hadn't forgotten those ways. To really like wake that up in me, even though I'd already been studying all of this stuff before I went there, to be immersed in the culture where that was just the way of life. Like, of course, you can talk to the tree, of course, that plant is giving you messages. And um, of course, there's a remedy for that. I think it was just really profound to feel that intactness.
Like animist relationship with life being normalized and relationships with non-human beings being part of normal cultural experience, which can be a real leap for us if we as Westerners, to really, there's always that part that's like, oh, am I making this up? Is this real? Do I just want this to be true? Even years into this work, that part's still there, and I have to be in dialogue with that part of me. So I can imagine that actually being immersed for a period of time where that question just isn't there, that wondering just it doesn't exist
Yeah.
because people, it's just normal. Then yeah, I can imagine that would be really powerful.
Yeah.
Is that part online for you still? Do you still have that conversation with yourself?
That's a really good question. Not as much. It can come up, but it's so much more quiet now. And I think one of the things that has helped it become so much less quiet is not only my own trust, but then supporting other, like just watching the people who come to work with me lean into their own trusting and then like being so in awe of watching all these people have their own direct relationship. It's strengthened my own. It's like that two-way street. It's so relational, even though I'm the one holding the space and maybe I have more experience or something like that. It doesn't matter in the end. It ends up being this like, that also is relational between me and the other person I'm sitting with. And I think it
Mm.
continues to like steady my faith and steady my trust to see the different kinds of magical and very real connections that get made.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for answering that. It's something I don't often ask. I feel like I don't talk about it very often either. That voice that is still part of my journey, even where I am with that.
Well, and
Yeah.
when I first started, I really had to learn about that when I first started teaching people how to have this connection because it would come up so much that I had to really sit with it. So it's interesting that you're asking about it. I had to learn about how to work with that because it is actually such a sign of our broken lineages. Um, and you have a young child, you can see that intactness that's there for our children. I also have we have young kids, 3 and 4, both of us. So my daughter will just go into the imaginal realms so easily and she'll communicate with the plant and the tree and the cat and she's having all these conversations and you can really see like there's a time where then all of a sudden the culture will say if you're in the regular culture, kind of like, okay, no more imaginary friends at school. Like no more, it's not appropriate, right? Like there's an age where our culture will say, unless you have certain kind of parents and community and you're lucky, it's kind of like, okay, we're done, you're a certain age and now we don't do that. And a lot of us have memories of imaginary friends or like the tree that was our best friend that we always talk to, or, but then there's an age where you get socialized out of it and the culture tells you that it's not real. And we all have different experiences, whether it's like from religion or schooling or our family of origin. And so a lot of this work sometimes is also like healing inner child work, where it's like coming back to that almost childlike wonder.
Mm.
There is some cultural healing there. There's a cultural repair in that voice, you know?
Mm. Yeah, beautiful insight. Thank you. So just to go back to the question I was asking before around, you've had these are two threads that we've named and spoken about, and I know you've done some other amazing trainings. What else feels like it's been really formative in leading you to this place and this particular kind of work?
Yeah. Well, there's one really other big one. I mean, there's lots of them, but when I first moved to Colorado after graduate school, I met this woman who lived here in town, and this is what she did for her living. And I didn't really know much about this kind of work, but it was almost like something that I had always been seeking but didn't know it existed. And
Mm.
I got to meet her, and we just had this immediate connection, and she basically taught me how to journey to meet my helping spirits and guides, and started teaching me some of the you know, earth-centered healing arts, and I would take certain classes like soul retrieval or extraction and, psychopomp, like helping spirits of the dead cross, and eventually she asked me to apprentice with her, which was a big, big honor because there was a way that it was like set up like an old way where I would learn by seeing her clients with her. I would sit in she had this little building in the back of her house amongst all her herbs and plants. And I would just sit and we would see clients, and she would just teach me, sometimes through actual teachings and sometimes just through being with her, with all of her clients, of just how to connect with our guides and let our guides move through our bodies and
Mm.
bring forth what needed to be brought forth. And I would do things at the time I was younger so I could do this. Like, I would also take care of her children and sweep the floor and go on family vacations and help prepare meals. It was this real old school style apprenticeship that was a very special time in my life that really opened all of this up and helped me move through all of the cultural conditioning.
Wow. Oh, I'm a little bit envious, have to say. Like, I think that kind of old world apprenticeship situation where you get to, sit at the feet of someone who has really mastered their offering and their gift and their skills, and yeah, and sweep the floor, chop wood, carry water, and repay that kind of favor in that way, but then be able to learn in that experiential, hands-on, intimate fashion. It's something that I have spent probably most of my 20s craving and wishing for, the crone to guide the maiden. Yeah, and that just wasn't.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a precious gift. I love that for you. Yeah, I celebrate that for you.
Yeah, I really don't take it for granted. It's a precious
Mm.
thing. And it was hard too, but I don't want to paint it all roses and butterflies because it had this element of like devotion and like school of hard knocks, like difficult things happening and big initiation things, and um things like falling apart, like big lesson, like because of the intensity of the apprenticeship, it also always had a lot of big learnings consistently happening. I didn't have like a partner and a family. It was like that was all took all my energy and all my time. Like that was what I was really doing. And there was a lot of learning the hard way too. So I just wanted to just to not have too much of a pedestal on the romantic fantasy of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really wise to point to, and that is what the old world apprenticeships were like. It was like that they became your family and your, everything, right? How long was it going for?
So I studied with her for about 6 years intensively, and about 3 years of it was in the apprenticeship form. And it was a real, like in the apprenticeship form, there's like certain like agreements of like the way the relationship was in during that time that made it like a very deep dive.
Mm, it's a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So before we close up, I want to loop back to hawthorn, and we spoke about hawthorn being, a plant that you have a beautiful ancestral connection to and with. Um, how do you, in your personal life, continue to deepen and nourish that relationship with a plant that you feel connected with?
You know, it's kind of like if you think about a partner that you've had for a long time, how it can become easy to take them for granted
Mm.
because you're just like so used to being together every day, year after year after year. And what actually is like, I don't know if you've had this realization, but like what actually can help a relationship feel fresh is to like always keep being curious and like and allowing them to show up in new ways and allowing yourself to show up in new ways and continuing to ask questions and listen. So I look at it relationally in the same way. It's like I don't claim that I know everything there is to know about hawthorn, and when I am growing and evolving and changing in my life, there's almost like new ways that I can experience
Mm.
hawthorn's medicine and wisdom and magic too. It's like, oh, now I'm going through a big grief process, for example, and if I'm feeling grief like I've never felt before, and then I'm working with hawthorn, I'm like, whoa, that's a revelation
Mm.
to experience the way that hawthorn's tending my heart while I feel deep grief. So now I'm knowing more about that, right? It's almost like my life experience it informs like the way the plants can get in and that we can relate together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like the context of where you are in your life, gives the plant new ways to meet you and new forms of medicine to arise in that relational space between you. Absolutely makes sense. Yeah, I talk about that a lot actually in this group I'm working with now. About halfway through a 4-month journey, a bit more, 2/3 of the way through, and it's really interesting to see just that reflection that there's a few women who are postmenopausals, a few women who are perimenopausals, a few younger women who are very much in that, mid 20s, and seeing the older women who know the plants more are able to say like, oh wow, it's just interesting to me that this plant, discovered its nettle or mugwort, because when I was a young woman I tried working with this plant, it really wasn't for me, and now like who I am physically and emotionally and spiritually is so different. And so it turns out this plant has some real gifts for me now, but I'd kind of just written it off because I didn't enjoy it in my 20s, and now that I'm in my 60s, has all these, yeah, there's all this medicine. And just, I think that's beautiful. Of course, the plant, the medicine of the plant changes as we change and move through different phases of life.
I really experienced that. I just flashed on a memory of that with motherwort. After I became a mother, like I've always loved motherwort because I can have some anxiety sometimes, and it's really nice for that. But after I was a new mother, and I took some motherwort, and it just like centered me so deeply. I went, oh, like, oh, I get it now. Like, oh, mother, the plant.
Yeah, that's who you are. So the newest thing that's been coming up for you, I don't actually know hawthorn very well. I don't have that. Um, I've never really worked with hawthorn in an intentional way. I've prescribed it a couple of times, but it's not one of the herbs that's deep in my story yet. So yeah, so I mean, I know it's for the heart, and I know like physical heart and the emotional heart, and then I'm hearing as well for you, it's really powerful for grief and holding us through that grieving
Yeah.
process.
Well, I was just thinking, oh, I actually brought, I was like, maybe we're going to talk about how I have a little fresh picked berries right here. I'll show you. I guess
Oh.
you can't really show it on but here's some fresh, bright berries from just a few days ago because it's hawthorn season now. Um, One of the things that I personally, again, I love to give freedom for everyone to have their own unique experience. So I'll say for me personally, I found that sometimes Hawthorn allows me to like expand my capacity to hold more than one truth at the
Mm,
same time. For example, like the grief to gratitude spectrum.
mm,
To be like deeply grieving, but then feel that like stretch to feel like the gratitude and the preciousness of life. Um, or like to just expand from black and white thinking, which I feel like we're in a time in our culture right now where we're really dealing with a lot of that, the difficulty that can happen
mm,
when we just have the black and white thinking. I find that Hawthorne helps almost like open up the pathways to like hold more
mm.
at the same time.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
The pluralistic thinking, or like complex thinking instead of polarized thinking, that's a really, if we could sprinkle a bit of that around the world right now, it might be a really beautiful shift. New possibilities emerging. Yeah, I can feel that too with grief, in our emotional self and our hearts, that if we actually tune in, I've been thinking about this lately, if we tune into what's happening in our hearts, usually there's a few feelings going on at once, and sometimes they don't actually make any sense together. Often if I ask my daughter, how are you feeling, she says,
No.
a little bit happy and a little bit sad and a little bit cranky and a little bit hungry and a little bit jealous.
What a wise being.
Like, are you just listing all the feelings that you know the names for, or is that genuinely what's happening? Yeah. Then a few times I've been like, "Well, what do you feel happy about?" And I actually ask her, and she has an answer. What do you feel sad about? There's like an answer for each of those things.
I just heard the word, like when I was tuning into Hawthorne and what we're talking about, I heard the word coherence, like has the
Mm,
ability to create coherence. So you might have all these different experiences going on, but somehow there's this coherence that Hawthorne like almost like holds the container, wraps around you with all your different experiences that you're having. And I also find that hawthorn often is like
mm,
a threshold plant too. It's like on the hedges, or you hear stories a lot in Ireland about it growing through sacred sites or being at places where the veil is thin, connected to the spirit world, or uh, crossing of thresholds too. There's a lot of cool mystical stories in that way.
mm. Yeah, I guess the hedges of that, isn't it?
Yeah. When you were saying earlier that you're like, I've only prescribed it a few times and it hasn't come deep in yet." I almost, like, felt this little, like, giggle that I feel sometimes, like, "Not yet, here she comes, she's coming in."
Here she comes. Yeah, it's funny. I've been having this feeling the last few months. I was running a retreat, and one of the practices I get people to do after we've gone a bit deeper into that general animist
Yeah,
sensing and listening to the body, listening to the
yeah,
heart. Get people just to go out and wander till a plant kind of calls out to them. Can be any plant, and I do it at a beautiful property that has lots of medicine
yeah.
plants, and yeah, it's a really gorgeous place. And so there could be a medicine plant, it could just be like, you know the grass or any kind of little weed or big tree, and then sit with the plant, and then people invite a kind of breathing with the plant and invite the plant to communicate with them if it would like to. So I guess similar to what you're doing in a whole group, but this is more one-on-one with a plant that has chosen you. And I really try and get people to wait until they feel a sense of invitation from a plant, that plant is really keen to connect with them. And then after that, I get them to write a poem. And people, it's funny, poetry is like, doesn't it, and I really try to encourage, I love bad poetry from the heart. It's my favorite things. Like, don't worry about the artistic quality of your poem. And often they're just amazing because they come from that, you know the numinousness of that relationship with the plants. I think you were just saying before we were recording that Stephen Harrod Buhner said, put the leaf of a wild plant on your tongue and you will speak poetry. And one of the women in the group, one of the people in the group, she came back and she had been sitting with hawthorn. She's actually the property owner there. So she'd planted that hawthorn not that long before. And it had this beautiful message for her about courage and bravery and heart. And I think she actually thinks she's getting married soon, and that's, and she's 50 and she always thought she'd never get married. And there was this whole thing for her
Yes.
around like the bravery of that deep opening and the thorn, like still having the protection. Anyway, it was just really beautiful. And hawthorn came really strongly into the space. This is maybe like a month ago. And ever since then, it's just been, hawthorn's been in the back of my mind. It's like, I wonder if I can plant it here. And yeah. And what's really interesting is that night I did a grief process, and I was making an altar, and I said, I had to get flowers, and nearly everyone, without realizing it, picked hawthorn flowers. The hawthorn was flowering. So I had this altar covered in
Oh,
hawthorn flowers for this grief process that we were all doing together. And so it's interesting that, you've mentioned grief and holding space. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something. My little introduction to hawthorn continues, as you just said. Here she comes.
I feel excited for you. But that's beautiful about the flowers. I love how, like, also when you're just tuning into the landscape, it's like, then everybody brought hawthorn flowers to the altar. Like, nobody's thinking with their rational mind that that's what, it's like there's this whole other kind of intelligence and knowing. And to me, that's real magic.
Yeah, and no one had done that process before either, so like, they knew it was going to be a grief process, but it wasn't like, I feel like if you'd gone through that process and you really sat with what it was, you could, and you sat with the knowledge about hawthorn, you could put two and two together, as you said. But that's not what was happening. I think it was really that plant saying, "Hi, I want to be in this process. This is my thing."
Yeah.
mm,
I just thought of a poem.
please, I'd love to hear a poem. Let's finish. Let's finish on a poem.
Yeah. So, this is more personal and vulnerable, but it just kept coming to me to share it. Like, there's something about sharing it now, and I don't really know why, but we didn't really get into it in this talk today, but I am going through some health things right now, and of course there's so much more that we could dive into. Ready? I rise up rooted from the sacred waters of creation on willow wings of moonlight, born again into the same life, changed by a new light. Mycelial rootworks growing new possibilities. I am not the holder. Surrender to my prayer. The divine one widens me, works through me, bending, unbreaking fluidity. Place me on her lap. Bring me into the center of my being. Use me, nourish me, bring your electric joy through me. Leaf shaped tears that taste of awe and opening. Dip me in your cleansing waters and dance my willow branch arms to make something beautiful. Recreate me in your holy name, Arava.
That's it for this moon cycle. Thanks for joining me in another layer of this fascinating conversation we are having about the role of the sacred in our lives as herbalists. If you know someone who would love this episode, then send it through to them, as our work strengthening our herbal community through grassroots herbal education starts right here. I'll see you next time the moon is round in the sky, and until then, I wish you good health and many plants.